Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the Grueling Truth CFL Weekly Pick'em Show. We're, of course, not picking anything. We're going live. We're going to look back at the two great games that were played today. We're going to start off with the Calgary Stampeders, who just a few minutes ago punched their ticket to the 105th Grey Cup with an exciting 32-28 win over the Edmonton Eskimos. The Eskimos rolled out to a 14-0 lead after scoring on their first two possessions, including a 69-yard touchdown by Darrell Walker on a busted coverage. The Stamps came back, rallied, went on a 30-1 run, and of course what everybody's going to talk about is Coach Jason Moss down a touchdown, under 2 minutes left, and he kicks a field goal, Oz.
Well, the sick thing is there was even, in addition to the math, okay, there was the other argument was that the long snapper had been injured during the game, this guy Levi Steinhauer, and so they were using Odell Willis at long snap, and he had blown a snap earlier, and so here's yet another reason not to kick the field goal in that situation. But I'll tell you what, maybe Moss bet the same thing I did because I had Edmonton +5, but Calgary to win. He did exactly what I needed. I won by 1 point. I won both my bets. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moss.
I don't see how anybody would think it was smart to kick a field goal in a situation like that, Brian.
No, and it's funny, before we went on, we were discussing this. I mean, I'm trying to think of all possible options from a coaching standpoint why you would kick a field goal, and I can't find one even remotely. I mean, outside of, if you had your snapper or your, especially when your snapper's hurt and all these things. I mean, there were so many things there, and what I'm wondering is why there was nobody on the sideline on the headsets, standing beside and saying, we can't kick now.
I mean, 7 minus 3 equals 4, you mean?
Yeah, the thing that gets me, Brian, is this. Even if you come out and stop them right away and make them punt, you've now got to go probably 60 or 70 yards to score a freaking touchdown to win the game when you were 13 yards away. They had all the momentum. They'd just come off scoring. They stopped Calgary. You got Mike Riley. That would be like in Super Bowl 23, the 49ers deciding to just kick the field goal and take the tie and take their chances in overtime, which I wish they would have done, by the way.
Right. But that's the whole thing. It didn't make any sense. Is there's no reason to kick a field goal there, and you would think that there would have been somebody, Mike Riley, as a quarterback, that would have looked at him and said, we can't kick here. What are we doing? That's just one of those things. I would love to hear his explanation, and I really hope somebody asked him, because I'm more interested in the explanation than anything else, because it makes no sense.
All right, real quick, Oz just brought up how he won money today. He won money on mybookie.ag, which is our sponsor. You can go to the website, www.thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner, go right in, sign up. If you want, you can put in a promo code of TGT50, get 50% back on up to $3,000. But, Oz, I know you have to be a happy camper today because of the mybookie.ag.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. I did the scattershot betting on the NFL this week, and I wasn't quite as lucky. So, yeah. Well, because again, so because I had money in this game in the way that I described in the last 2-3 minutes, I'm playing the scenarios for the overtime. Because in the overtime, you can't kick a field goal in CFL ball, right? So I'm figuring the only way I could possibly win is if somebody misses on a 2-point conversion. And I win, and I win by 2 points. Calgary wins by 2, and so I win. But it was just sick. It was literally like the perfect thing to happen. And I am certain that my betting combination I was not the only person with that combination out there, because 5 points was a lot of points to give Edmonton, who easily could have tied it.
Yeah, and if you look at this game, it started off as kind of on the Pick'em Show with Robert Drummond, which we'll be doing later on this week again for the Grey Cup. The thing that really stuck out to us is this is a game that all of a sudden seemed competitive, And a lot of that was because Calgary hadn't had to really play a meaningful game in a month. And I think, Brian, the start of this game showed that. Edmonton came out, jumped them right away, go up 14-0. It's really impressive that Calgary could come back, turn it on, and turn that into a 30-1 run after that.
Yeah, Edmonton came out and really, quite honestly, you almost had the feeling that this game may be a blowout. Then all of a sudden, and one thing that I noticed is as Calgary is making a run, the one thing you notice with Edmonton is they really didn't run the football at all. So it was almost like they were trying so hard to be super aggressive and not only with the lead, but hey, let's keep it going, let's keep going hard. I almost felt like they forgot the running game, and CJ Gable is a great guy to give the ball to.
Yeah, so basically,
and they weren't doing that.
Basically, Brian, they played super aggressive for 58 minutes, and then they played super conservative in the last two.
Exactly. It makes no sense whatsoever. And one thing I will say is Calgary, with what they did is, Calgary, and again, as a sign of a great football team, is they never got down, they never panicked, and you almost wonder in the last 2 minutes when Edmonton goes and kicks that field goal, were they panicking as a coach staff? Well, we got to get points. Well, what's the difference if you kick a field goal or if you go for it and don't get it? There's no difference. It's almost like they panicked and thought, well, we got to kick a field goal, and there was nobody there to go, why are we kicking a field goal? I mean, I'm really baffled by this.
Do you think maybe everybody was so shocked that they were kicking a field goal that they didn't say anything to him?
I don't know, because
it looks like Mike Riley would grab him and say, look at this situation.
Yeah, you would think that there would have been somebody, a coach, and somebody in the press box, Mike Riley, the third string center, somebody would have grabbed somebody and said, what are we doing? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and if you look at this game, Oz, it's both of these games today came down to the final seconds. It's got to be heartbreaking for the fans and the players of those teams. Mike Riley, 23 for 38, played a great football game. But as Brian said, the thing I question is C.J. Gable, 12 carries, 54 yards. Why didn't they use him more running the ball?
Yeah, no idea, especially when you go up 14-0 early. I mean, you were just talking about hyper-aggressive. Well, here you go. That's what killed them, right? Why didn't they just ground it out at that point? Look, all season long, when Edmonton has gotten a lead, they've held that lead. And it was like in this game, they forgot how to do that. And it's not like Calgary is so monstrous that they couldn't handle it. I mean, again, they shut him out in the first quarter. It took them a while. It even took them 6 or 7 minutes to kick off a little more rust in that second quarter. I mean, Edmonton really could have put the foot to the throat with another touchdown in early second quarter. And I don't understand why they switched the game plan like that. I mean, Gable was the X factor, as you wrote in your column, Mike, at thegruelingtruth.net. Gable was the X factor, and they just X'd him right out.
Yeah, and Brian, we've talked all year, really the last 2 years, of how Bo Levi Mitchell is like the Tom Brady, the Calgary Stampeders are like the New England Patriots, and I don't think it's any coincidence that when you're playing those two guys and you're playing that team, that you kind of think that maybe you have to do something a little extra that you really don't have to do.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to what I said earlier. When you watched Calgary coming out of being down 14-0, is there was no panic, and so much of that comes from your quarterback, because if your quarterback's panicking, everybody else is going to panic. If your coaches are panicking, everybody else is going to panic. But there was no panic, and he just came out, did a great job. I mean, I don't believe he had any turnovers. Threw the ball well. Messam, they did a great job involving Messam in it. With running game, I think he had 71 yards. Finch had 4 carries for 81 yards, including 50 yarder. I mean, so
Yeah.
They never panicked. They never panicked, and that's why they came back. And now it kind of, where there was a comparison made before the show, where, kind of like watching Atlanta last year in the Super Bowl. You almost had that comparison of watching Edmonton try to stay. They kept trying to stay aggressive, It didn't work. Calgary, we call the New England of the CFL. They never panicked. There was never any signs of panic. And in the end, I mean, we're going to be talking about the field goal for a long time, but this was a game that, quite honestly, Calgary won because they showed that at the bottom line is, doesn't matter if they're down 14 or not. They're never going to panic, and they're just going to make the plays. That's what they do, and that's why they are who they are and have been who they've been for quite a while.
But look, I got to get this in here. You guys. Look, I got two professional football coaches here. Now, from the outside, and this is what fanboys like me and the pundits on the internet and on the TV are going to say tomorrow, is that Moss overthought this entire game, not just the field goal. He tried to get too cute. Now, is there such a thing as a coach of overthinking a game plan? Is there such a thing?
I think there is, Brian. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there is.
You know why I think that, Brian? Because I've done that before.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So
if you're a football coach, at any point you have always had moments where you overthink, you try to get too cute, you try to come up with the perfect play, you do all this stuff. And this was a great example of someone trying to be perfect in a football game instead of looking at the situation, adjusting on the fly. Calgary adjusted on the fly today. You saw that. You saw that both offensively. You saw that both defensively. They adjusted on the fly. Edmonton had this game plan. It was solid, but they never adjusted it, which is why they came out 14-0, and all of a sudden, things weren't as easy as they were coming out because Calgary adjusted, Edmonton did.
Yeah, and if you look at it, the one thing that I really liked, that Calgary did, was in the first half they used Roy Finch, who hasn't run as a running back hardly at all. He had 4 carries for 81 yards, and I think that he was kind of the glue that got them back into the game.
Yeah, now that's the classic Belichick move, right? Design or break out those 5 or 6 plays in the playbook for this guy. And that we haven't seen in at least a couple of months, and let him watch the work. But, I mean, to me, that was good game prep, because it's not overthinking. It's like, hey, I have an idea. Can we incorporate this? Yes, we can. Here, let's use them in the first half. Okay, let's go with that. As opposed to the other plan, which was like, oh, okay, I've got the best halfback weapon remaining in the playoffs, but yet they're expecting that. So I'm going to use him as a decoy half the time. No, see, to me, that was overthinking.
Yeah, what that almost remind me of, Oz, real quick, is I know you're a Rams fan, and you go back to Mike Martz in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. I mean, Today you had your best player, and you only got him 14 touches in the biggest game of the year.
Right. Which is, but I mean, and here's the other thing too. You look at the running game in Calgary. Well, Messham's stats don't look that awesome by themselves, but I'll tell you what, in the fourth quarter, when he had to grind it out, when he had to get a couple of first downs and extend the game a little bit, that's what he did. And the reason why he did that is because they went to option B, which you hadn't seen in a month and a half in the first half. And you weren't ready for that. See, now, to me, that was great game planning. I really like that. This guy's a rookie coach, head coach.
Yeah, and, number one, it helps to have all those veterans. And I think the Finch thing could have been something that maybe they've been planning for a while. Maybe that's why they haven't used him in that position. Yeah.
Again, Belichick move, right? You got to have that halfback that you stash, and you can break him out for use of the first half. I thought it was great.
All right, guys, we've talked about that. Jason Moss is a moron on that call. I mean, he's a good football coach, but
no Moss.
He screwed the pooch, as they say in Indiana, at the end of that game. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other classic game from today, which was Toronto and Saskatchewan. We'll be back in about a minute and 9 seconds after this word from our sponsor, MyBookie.ag.
Hey, Puckheads, this is Patrick.
And Jason.
From the Puck Guys podcast at the Grueling Truth Network, and we're here with one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money.
The Grueling Truth has partnered with MyBookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.ag.
In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and MyBookie.ag will give you a 50% bonus on your first deposit of up to $3,000 in extra cash. Just enter the promo code TGT50. That's TGT50 to take advantage of this offer. Where do they got to go, Jay?
That is a smart-looking question, Pat. They need to go to visit MyBookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth Network, and enjoy your winning today.
MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, we're back on a special edition of the CFL Weekly Pick'em Show. We're breaking down the 2 playoff games from today. Great games. Now we're going to go to Toronto, Saskatchewan, where Ricky Ray pulled a Joe Montana, pretty much flawless in his final touchdown drive with under 2 minutes remaining to send the Argonauts to the 105th Grey Cup. This was a game that was completely dominated for 3 quarters, Oz. And Jermaine Gabriel, almost got his name wrong, and Lemon, the defensive line for Toronto, really controlled this game, especially in the first half.
Yeah, Lemon was sick. Yeah, there was a lot of, I liked what you had said on the podcast. It came true until that fourth quarter, which we can talk about in a bit, about, that Argonauts offensive line keeping the Riders at bay. However, I don't want to give too much credit. I don't know that we can talk about too many individual heroes in this game except for Ray. Because look, I was talking about this before the show. Last week when the Edmonton Eskimos played and won against Winnipeg, they had 1 2-and-out. In this game, each of these teams had 11 2-and-outs. Okay, I believe that there were 7 turnovers, not including the very bizarre 3-and-out in the first quarter on the first drive by Toronto. So a good 8 turnovers in the first half. There was a lot of sloppy, random play here, except for anybody by Ray. And, also you can factor in for the Riders that Glenn had 3 interceptions in this first half. So I don't think we can put a lot of kind words on either offense here in this first 3 quarters, let's say.
Well, I can tell you this. I think the difference in this game was Glenn starting the game when he had 2 or 3 picks right away. He threw a pick 6 to Terrence Plummer over the middle, which was a stupid pass. I don't know why he did it. I guess that Saskatchewan agreed with us because they brought Brandon Bridge in. But in the end, I think it was Glenn's inability to generate any offense at all coming out in those first 5 or 6 drives that really did him in the end.
Yeah, it would have been nice. How different would this game have been if they had put up just a few points in the first half, and then in that third quarter, and for most of the second half, they hold the Argonauts to 1 point? It would have been a lot different. Ray would have had to have a lot more heroics than what he came up with. And the way that most of the other guys on his team were playing on the offense, he wouldn't have gotten that. 1 score was the difference for the Riders, but they just could not get a rhythm going on offense with Glenn. And then it took them the whole third quarter to catch up with Brandon Bridge as well. It was just, the Chris Jones platoon system did not work. And I'll tell you what, he's probably already looking at the free agent wire. He's probably already talking with James Franklin about, signing with the Riders next season. So,
Yeah, and
I
think this. I think people are going to go overboard on Brandon Bridge here. He was 11 for 21 with a touchdown, 141 yards. It's not like he did anything great.
The clutch touchdown was a special
it was Christian Jones. Yeah. I mean, Christian Jones returns the punt. That's why they had a chance to win the game at the end. It wasn't because of Brandon Bridge.
No, I wouldn't give Bridge too much of the credit there. I like this. I like the return touchdown for the Riders, and for most of the game, the Riders were doing a swell job at stifling the Argonauts. They were getting those turnovers. They were winning the turnover battle. Now they may have won it outright by the end of the game, but they were doing everything they could on the defense. It's just wow. As little as the Argonauts' offensive players were producing, the Riders were producing nothing on the offense. Nothing. Zero.
And I'll tell you this, Oz. I haven't heard the word swell used in a sentence since the last time I watched the Andy Griffith Show.
I was just thinking the exact same thing.
I always get called on that. But you know what? Swell is a perfectly good word. Superman uses swell.
It's swell.
Okay? It is. It's swell. It's dandy.
The word swell is swell. I was thinking the same thing, but I was being nice. I wasn't going to say anything. So.
All right, so Brian, I think coming into this game, I think we all were on the same page that if Toronto was to win the game, a lot of the reason would be James Wilder. Saskatchewan did a great job, held him to 3.7 yards per carry, 14 carries, 52 yards. I mean, the Rough Riders defense took him away, and I would have thought that if that was done, that Saskatchewan would have won this game.
Yeah, I mean, they took him away, and even with Ricky Ray, I mean, when you talk about the heroics at the end, but you really, if you look at the game as a whole, I mean, it wasn't like he played a great game either. I mean, his stats were decent. He, 71% completion percentage. He had 266 yards, but he had an interception. But defensively, I thought Saskatchewan played pretty well. But you and I both know you can play great on defense, but if you ain't get any help from your offense, it's hard to win. And they were put in that situation. They're 18 down 18-3 going into the fourth. Then Saskatchewan magically wakes up, but you're still, whenever you're working on having to chase that deficit. We've seen it many times in football. Once you get over that hump and get a lead, and you still give that other team time, and especially a player like Ricky Ray, that you lose games like this, and you didn't lose a game like this because of Ricky Ray's heroics. You lost a game like this because of what you did in the first three quarters.
Yeah, and one thing that stood out to me, Oz, is on top of that, there's no way I would have thought they had a chance to win it if you show me those stats, where Wilder did have 100 yards total. But S.J. Green, 3 receptions, 27 yards, only 4 yards after the catch. They totally took S.J. Green out of the game also.
Yeah, he had one target in the first half, and it was called back on a penalty. The one thing I was going to say about Wilder first is, when you guys as coaches teach a defensive, some sort of defensive thing, you should bring the tape of this game, because what they were doing.
Scheme?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Nah, well, just tackling, I would say,
okay.
Because what they were doing with Wilder was awesome. Every time he got the ball, they were bringing the second and third man. It was fantastic because, in the past 5-6 games, this dude had been averaging 9-10 yards a carry.
Well,
and they were just stopping him at the point of attack. It was awesome.
Well, see, the thing I saw was this. They were dropping 8, sometimes 9 in the coverage. And then they'd mix it up where they'd blitz a guy or two. But they were pretty much 8 or 9 guys in coverage. They were letting them catch the ball in front, and then they were swarming to get them, which that's the way football should be played anyways. Let them catch it, knock the snot out of them, and see if they want to come down and catch the next one.
There was so much out there. I mean, Green could just not be found until late in the third quarter, and even then he was a non-factor. So the Riders did a nice job. Jones did a nice job in taking away these weapons from Ray for the Argonauts. So nice job. Nice job by Jones. It's just too bad his quarterback situation was so futile this season.
Yeah, and I think the thing about dropping 8 or 9 into coverage, which I can't stress enough, is this. you really probably got 6 or 7 in coverage, and you got 2 guys locked up on S.J. Green, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, not only do they do a great job in coverage and locking him up, but usually when you put that much emphasis on one player, you're giving somebody else an opportunity to be a huge factor, and you didn't see that. Wilder was not a factor running the football. I think Combs had like 9 catches, but that wasn't a huge factor. They did a great job defensively. That this is one of those times where they concentrated on the two biggest factors, which is S.J. Green and Wilder. They took them out, but they took everybody else out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, and let's face it, last year in the East Division, they finished last. They were 3-15. The Argonauts turned things around under a new regime of Mark Trestman and Jim Popp. And Mark Trestman is a really good football coach. I mean, the NFL didn't work out for him, but CFL, he's a great coach. He did a great job today. And him and Jim Popp, what they did, Brian, was pretty amazing in 1 year's time.
Yeah, we talked about before the season began about, Toronto's success was going to depend on Ricky Ray. And to a certain extent, that was true. But what we saw as the season went on is we saw Wilder become a factor. They obviously have an S.J. Green was a huge factor, but we saw other people also step up and defensively, they played well. So I mean, really what they did is they built. They built a good football team. Ray stayed healthy, and you've got great coaching. And so when you have those things, that allows you, even if you're not the most talented team, to put yourself in position to win some games. And certainly they've done that.
Yeah, and Oz, the guy that really stepped up that I don't think anybody expected, with S.J. Green not doing a lot, with Anthony Coombs, who was Ray's favorite target on the afternoon. He caught 9 passes for 77 yards. He did a great job kind of out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, that 30. The long was the 32, and that was in the first quarter. That was right from the go. So, yeah, they were saying, okay, we're going to look for Coombs today if you're going to take away everybody else. But I think that you also pointed this out. I keep giving you props, Mike. It's killing me to do this, but you pointed this out on the preview last week that, again, the real strength of the Argonauts was that offensive line. And so that's what dropping guys into coverage was about. Look, they were perfectly line. They were perfectly happy dropping back into coverage and letting happen. They touched Ray 3 times in this game. Once it was on the first drive of the first quarter, and then the other 2 didn't happen until the fourth quarter. So they're perfectly happy just to play, trap, just to let him connect. But Coombs was finding the holes.
Now my other question is this. The platoon quarterback system. I know Oz brought it up on a couple weeks ago. He thought it was brilliant at the time.
Yeah.
I've never seen this work, Brian, when teams try to do this.
No, the platoon quarterback system has historically never worked. Now you'll have pockets of times like this where it works for a while, but as something that you do on a consistent basis, it's never worked.
Yeah, the old saying is if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you got none.
Got none.
Exactly, and really what we ended up seeing is exactly that in this situation. Now look, they made it work for a while, and that's what normally the best you can hope for in a 2 quarterback system is that it works for a while. But once you get into, many times once you get into a playoff situation, or when you've seen it at the college level, when you get into a bowl game, rarely does it ever work to the point of having great success to win a championship. And I'll give an old one. I know Michael, absolutely. I'll make his day. 1984 South Carolina Gamecocks that used a 2 quarterback system. They had Mitchell and they had Mike Holden. They won a lot of football games until they got into a big game situation, and then it didn't work.
Yeah, they lost to Oklahoma State in the bowl game, didn't they? Gator Bowl.
Yep, 21-14. They couldn't move the football, and they were actually undefeated. they were actually undefeated, and they were going into the regular season where everybody was, I think they were ranked at one point fourth or fifth in the country, and they lost. And I want to say it was Navy that beat them, and so that 2-quarterback system does not work. You can do it for a short term, but it generally will not ever win you a championship.
I was just actually I was reading about this prior to the show, the platoon system, because I was curious to see if it had ever worked. Because, by the way, the Riders looked like they were floundering with it today. It looked like a desperation move. But interesting that you brought up the South Carolina, because the team that I thought of was in 2012, South Carolina. They tried to do this again. And that was a top 10 team that year, but they weren't sniffing the championship. They did win a bowl game.
This is the thing, Brian. This is what I remember. They were 9-0. They played Navy at Annapolis Memorial Stadium. Actually, South Carolina was ranked number 2, and Navy beat them 38-21. And the thing about that South Carolina team is, I think the 5 weeks before that, all 5 weeks, they beat teams in the top 20. If I remember right, they beat Notre Dame, Pitt, I think NC State. They beat teams that were really good. They beat Florida State like 38-26 at home, and then they lost that game to Navy. They came back, and they beat Clemson, but they only beat them by a point. Clemson was a good team, but not great that year. And then they lost that Gator Bowl to Oklahoma State. I don't know if anybody really cares what we're talking about, but
that's a deep dive.
Yeah, I think the biggest point that we're making, though, is you can do the 2-quarterback system on the short term.
Yes.
But eventually it really comes back to bite you. It's not a matter of if it'll happen; it's just when it'll happen. And I think Saskatchewan, they made this thing run as long as they could, but eventually you just come to the point where that the sands are going to run out trying to do something like this.
Yeah, and the big thing here is this: I think going into next year, they've got a team that's so talented. They've got to find a quarterback. I mean, Glenn is good in spurts. He's a streaky quarterback. Bridge is a guy who I really don't like his mechanics and the way he throws the ball, which they may not care what I think in Saskatchewan. But I think they need to find a big-time quarterback. If they do, with the talent they've got, I mean, Deron Carter was amazing today. When they were in trouble, he comes in, makes a couple catches. Heck, he comes in and he plays cornerback and does a good job. So I think they've got to make a change at the quarterback position if Saskatchewan wants to have a chance to win a Grey Cup in the near future.
It's James Franklin. It's Franklin, the backup in Edmonton, because, this was a guy that Chris Jones drafted. I didn't draft, but got on his team after not being drafted in the NFL. He's going to be free agent next year. He's never going to get the chance to start as long as Riley is there. Also, Caleros will probably be out in Hamilton, so he could be up for grabs.
That's the guy I would go. I think Caleros and Carter together would be amazing. I think it'd be swell.
It'd be dandy, fine and dandy. No, it's going to be Franklin, though. It's going to be Franklin. I mean, this has been talked about since Jones went to Saskatchewan. So I think it's going to be Franklin. I think they're going to sign him in the offseason.
All right,
real
guys.
Quick.
Well, we're going to go ahead. We're going to wrap it up for tonight. I appreciate everybody that listened in. Make sure you go to thegruelingtruth.net. If you're a boxing fan, later tonight we're going to have Terrence Crawford on the show, on the boxing show, the Ringside Boxing Show. Make sure you check that out. Go check out mybookie.ag. And once again, as always, I want to thank Brian and even Oz, who did a swell job tonight, I thought. Brian, do you have any final words?
No, I don't have any final words. Just looking forward to the Grey Cup, so we'll have that show coming up here pretty soon.
All right, my final words are this. I told everybody that called me today while the Bengals were playing that they were watching the wrong game, that they should be watching the CFL playoffs. And I watched the Bengals game and the CFL game at the same time, and the quality of play was much better in the CFL game. It was more intense. Of course, it's a playoff game, but overall, the level of play was better. I mean, the officiating wasn't terrible today. I've never seen great officials, but the officiating was it was solid. Nobody screwed the game up for anybody. So in the end, I think if you were an American football fan and you did not watch the CFL playoffs today, you were missing out. Oz, any final words?
Well, I would agree with that. Just since we're going to do a preview show later in the week, I won't make any predictions or anything. So I'll just say these two CFL games today were the bee's knees.
And they were swell. And it was a swell time having this live show. We will have a live show later on during the week. We'll tweet about it. We'll get Robert on here to talk about it. We might even have another show Saturday night before the Grey Cup. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up from now. Remember, check out mybookie.ag. Go to thegruelingtruth.net. Get all the Grueling Truth content. So for Brian Schmidt, Oz Davis, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.